All right, we need to talk. If you believe that you'll grow your business with someone who's going to be working on commission only, whether that's pay-per-call, revenue share, commission, whatever you want to call it, then I think we have a problem. Because in this video, I'm going to be very honest, I'm going to give you some tough love. Because this really is a fundamentally flawed way of seeing the world. I'm going to break down in excruciating detail why this mindset of I'll only work with agencies or lead gen providers if they work on commission, why that attitude is holding you back. We'll discuss what attitude to change it to and how to see this entire world of lead gen providers, marketing consultants, coaches, ad agencies, and so on. And I'll promise you something, because although in this video, I'm going to mostly be ranting at you as to why you are wrong for wanting to work with somebody for free. But if you stick it out and accept staring into the mirror that I'm going to be holding in your face for the next few minutes, then I promise you that you will get rewarded with a very good framework for how to take ownership of your business, how to make peace with the fact that you may have been burned in the past, and how to avoid getting burned in the future. And with this new level of radical ownership, you'll be in a much better position to grow your business in the future. So that's the upside to this rant. My name is Michael Bohannes. We help B2B consultants and agency owners build their first version of an outbound funnel. We have a lifetime revenue of over 2 million, and we've helped our clients make many millions more. And in our work, we very often encounter people who have been sort of infected by this mind virus of only wanting to work with lead gen providers on a commission basis. And the argument very often goes like this: I've hired people in the past. What they did didn't work. I've sunk a lot of money into that, didn't get any ROI. So now I'm only willing to work with people like you on a commission basis. And when I hear this, I get it, really, because it really sucks to hear promises of how you will be making a lot of money and then you get no results. But in most cases, it's your fault. And I get it that you don't like me for saying this, but unfortunately, it really is true. Because either you've hired or you've trusted somebody inexperienced or untrustworthy, or you've taken on someone at the wrong time. So let's cover these 2 points. You've trusted somebody inexperienced or untrustworthy. You haven't checked their references. You believed superficial, inflated, or outright fake case studies. You didn't ask hard enough questions. You haven't tested their competence. Basically, you've either hired a felon or a chimp to be your accountant. And that, sorry to say, that's on you. It's your business after all. Or you've taken on somebody at the wrong time. That could be possible. They were good, but you just shouldn't have worked with them. If, for example, you're making less than 10K a month through referrals, and somebody sells you a 5K a month retainer for building your personal brand, and after 5 months of this, you haven't seen a client yet, which, by the way, is a true story of somebody I had on a sales call once. If that is the case, you've simply hired the wrong people at the wrong time. Very likely they are a good personal branding agency and they know what they do. However, it's really hard to build a personal brand of someone who so far has only made 20K in lifetime revenue. And it's possible that they did take advantage of you. Maybe they shouldn't have sold you their service, but are you going to go walking around blaming them? How will that make your situation better? And they don't even have to have been unethical for having done that. It's not a scenario, it's like we don't sell alcohol to minors, right? This is a situation where a grown-up walks into a Louis Vuitton store and buys an expensive handbag. It's not the Louis Vuitton clerk's job to ask you about your financial situation and assess whether it's the right time for you to buy a bag. You're a grown-up. Now, of course, you might say that you just don't know how to hire somebody for the important position of growing your business. And that's probably right. And it's the step in the right direction. Yes, you might not know how to hire somebody good and suitable for you. And as a result, you've made mistakes in the past. Accept it, own it, and take action now. You simply have to learn how to do that well. Because if you don't, and if your dominant reaction to having been burned in the past is to only work with commission-based vendors, you've just narrowed your pool to the most incompetent or desperate crowd imaginable. Because really think about it. Who's going to be willing to work for free for a small business owner for a very uncertain paycheck at a very uncertain point in time in the future? This is the worst possible business model a service provider could choose. So it's clear that only the very worst among them will be willing to accept such a deal. And even those rookies, while they are working with you, they'll be constantly looking for a better deal. They'll try to get someone to pay for their services upfront. So if you have a commission-based deal, you're on the bottom of their list of priorities. Almost everything is more important to them than you and your business. Do you really want to work with somebody who's relatively incompetent for whom you are at the bottom of their list of priorities? It just doesn't make sense. Now, of course, there's always the eager rookies, and I very much respect them, right? I actually even recommend that when you are starting out as a B2B service provider, you totally should work for free for a testimonial, for referrals, and maybe for a revenue share. That's totally cool. And as an aspiring B2B service provider, or even someone with experience and who's pivoting into an adjacent area and you want to build success stories fast, you should work on commission only. That's great. And I regularly hire people to work on commission. I just don't expect much from them. I don't expect that they will save my business, that they will now open a huge new door to me to a new territory. But as a buyer of these services, you have to know those are still unproven rookies. And chances are good, because they have no track record, that they will be unreliable, incompetent, green, right? After all, they have no track record. You just don't know anything about them other than what you can see on a Zoom call. Someone who's the opposite of that, somebody reliable, competent, they're probably already going to be making a lot of money, and they'll be unwilling to take your commission deal offer. So if your reaction to having been burned before is to demand commission-based deals only, that's like having had a string of bad relationships and as a result establishing a rule that you'll only date someone who you find hanging around the train station between midnight and 3 a.m. I mean, it's not impossible that you will meet someone who's a good relationship material, but narrowing things down to this audience will make it less likely you will find a good partner. So that's the first key point. By asking for a commission-based deal, you are biasing your audience towards the least competent and experienced people. Super important. But of course, as I said, I understand where you're coming from. You had bad experiences with lead gen providers. So what you need to put in place so that you stop having these bad experiences. So here's a 10-step plan or 10 points that if you follow them, you'll always succeed in the selection of lead gen providers, marketing consultants, fractional CMOs, ad agencies, etc. First of all, point 1. Treat the area of sales and marketing with respect. Accept that its own science with some element of art in it and commit to learning it. If you are the owner of a B2B service business, you cannot just insist on practicing your craft. You also have to learn how to sell and market your service. And you have to learn it yourself. Now, if you're a supply chain consultant or an automation agency, for example, you will probably never be world-class at sales and marketing. You have a chance of being world-class at supply chain consulting or automation, but sales and marketing, you're probably not going to be the best at. But you have to be good enough that you can hold your own in a conversation with a service provider and, if need be, call them on their bluff, right? That is if you're hiring somebody for sales and marketing. And of course, that doesn't mean that you will be treating everyone with a uniform level of contempt and suspicion, that everyone is a snake oil salesman peddling some dark art that you know nothing about. But it does mean knowing how to probe in the right places. And the fact that most B2B service business owners do not want to learn it then leads them to outsource prematurely. And because they outsource without having the skills, they often pick the wrong service provider. So the upshot is, you got to learn a little bit about sales and marketing. And by the way, watching this channel is actually a good method, so subscribe. All right, anyway, let's go to point 2. Take radical ownership of your company's growth. That means that on a purely philosophical level, you cannot outsource client acquisition to a third party. And that's just not coming from me. Every single business guru and influencer, whether that's Hormozi, Sam Ovens, Alex Becker, any of the all-time greats, will tell you the same thing. The key point you need to understand is that you cannot and must not outsource responsibility for growing your business to someone who is paid on commission. It's just not going to work. For every one 7-figure business owner who happened to succeed with having other people grow their business for them, you will find 1,000 others who've built their own client acquisition system. Having 100% commission-driven people grow your business for you end to end is the absolute exception to the rule. And the sooner you accept this fact and stop chasing unicorn status, I'm going to be the one who's going to make it to a lot of revenue with just depending on commission-based people, pay-per appointment setting type, revenue share, the faster you'll accept this, the faster you'll put your business on a fast track to success. Now, point 3, there is no white knight in shining armor to come to save you. The less experienced someone is, the more they expect to be saved. The real pros don't expect to be saved. They just identify deficits that they then systematically eliminate via a skill upgrade, either themselves or someone on their team, or by hiring somebody skilled to have them in-house, or by hiring an external third party for pay to do it for them. Point 4, you need to know at least one client acquisition method, end to end, you yourself, the founder. Most people outsource way too early, mostly because they just don't want to touch that icky problem of sales and marketing with a 10-foot pole. So you have to know one method, and it cannot be networking and going to events. It has to be something reasonably scalable. It has to be either cold outreach, ads, or some strong content webinar play. It has to be something that can take a stranger and within a few weeks or months, if it's a high ticket thing, make them trust you enough so they will invest with you. This is so important because once you do that, no one can ever BS you again. Once you know the skeleton of a client acquisition system, you know the KPIs from one stage to another, then you have acquired so much meta knowledge that no one will sell you a castle in the air style dream anymore. I know our cold email funnel inside out, and as a result, I'm very good at evaluating offers from adjacent service providers like Facebook ad agencies. I can tell you, I can run circle around a Facebook ad agency, whether they have something credible to sell to me. Right, I'm going to ask them about their average CAC, average call setting cost, average cost of if I speak to them, I know our cold email funnel inside out. And as a result, I'm very good at evaluating offers from adjacent service providers like Facebook ad agencies, for example. If a Facebook ad agency pitches me, I'm going to be asking them so many questions about their past success stories, what they believe is likely, what kind of cost to book a call. I'm going to have some kind of anchor offer that then we're going to upsell to. I'm going to ask them so many questions. They can probably not BS me. And because of point 3, which was the point, there's no white knight in shining armor come to save me, I strongly recommend that your first investment into building client acquisition systems is one where you get taught rather than you just outsourcing the whole build of the system. It's going to be much cheaper if somebody just coaches you versus if they do it for you. You will learn it much better than if you get presented with a system that has been built for you. So just to give you an idea, I've once spoken to a webinar agency, and they told me that the coaching with them for a whole year would be $36,000. When I asked them how much would it be to have the webinar built by them, the whole webinar funnel, they were a very good agency, very good service provider. They said it would only start at 100,000, right? So, and then there would be some bells and whistles. So those are the ratios, right? Even if it's a very expensive coaching, 36,000 for the whole year, then it's more than 3 times that for them to even start working on your webinar on a done for you basis. Okay. So somebody really good is going to do done for you only at a very, very expensive level. Okay. Point 5, sales before marketing. I define sales as the activity of interrupting somebody and making them an offer. Marketing is a process of becoming known, liked, and trusted. Most people, when they are starting out, they focus too much on marketing. They put out content, they try to ingratiate themselves with their audience so that that audience then comes to them, right? They try the honeypot method. I believe it's much better to learn how to sell, to polarize the market between those who are in the market for your services and those who are not. And only then, once you've really mastered sales, you've got it to easily 7 figures, only then you really invest a lot into marketing. And the reason for that is that sales gives you immediate feedback whether what you are offering is sellable or not. Marketing, you could theoretically be spending months, sometimes even years, marketing into the void without anyone ever coming to you. You need that fast iteration loop of sales and prioritize it over marketing. I've made a longer video on this topic, sales before marketing. If you're interested, just click this tile and watch this video. Point 6, take growth steps in the correct order. Previously, I mentioned this B2B service providers who has less than 10K a month in revenue and who decided to engage a personal branding agency and spend $5,000 a month on them. That is the wrong order of things. You should not be engaging a personal branding agency when you're at that level. Any form of branding or marketing should be rudimentary until you are at 7 figures. The correct order is roughly like that. Number 1, using networking and referrals to get to 10K a month. From 10K to 50, do cold outreach, cold DMs, cold calling, cold email. And then depending on your industry, you can probably get cold outreach to 100,000 a month. After that, you should probably switch to ads. And before you are at 7 figures, don't invest more than 3K a month into content. Once you are at 7 figures, now you really put the pedal to the metal on content. You develop a great YouTube channel, you pay an agency to help you edit content and manage it for you, etc. This is the right order of things. The biggest mistakes people make in this context and where a lot of misinvestment happens is they, number 1, over-index on marketing too early on before having a really good, well-oiled sales motion. They sign up with some LinkedIn guru who will teach them to leave 30 comments a day and to be vulnerable in their content and to do this for months at a time without ever having a single sales call. Second mistake, and this is definitely a mistake I made, they invest in personal brand too early. When I had my little personal branding era moment, I was at 10K a month and I hired a coach for 20K. And that was a big mistake. I shouldn't have done that far too early. I didn't have enough credibility and it was far too much a financial burden for me to incur. And then also the third mistake is that people invest in others who don't have a good client acquisition system going. For example, there are consultants who only work on positioning, right? There's people who will support you in your positioning, but they never teach how to do the positioning, how to put it to the test, specifically testing it on the market with, for example, cold outreach or ads. You can come up with an amazing, intellectual construct of how you're positioning. But if the market doesn't accept it, it's worthless. I once talked to a guy who only works on positioning. And most recently, when I talked to him, he was in big trouble because he just didn't have a method to get new clients himself. He was also relying on his own positioning and things were not going very well for him. And the third mistake is they invest in people who don't have a good client acquisition system going. For example, there are consultants who will serve you. If you're a consultant, you're an agency owner, somebody will work with you to work on your positioning, to work on your strategy, your consulting strategy. How do you have to position yourself in the market? But they don't really have a system to put that positioning to the test. I mean, specifically testing it on the market with cold outreach or ads. They just will help you, with this beautiful intellectual construct, but you don't know if it's actually going to work. That's bad, right? You have to have some kind of system that helps you verify with the market whether it is a positioning that works on them. Point 7, how you use service providers says a lot about you. Alex Hormozi says that in every single coaching training situation that he was involved in, he always aimed to be, and very often he became, the best student in that service provider's history. And this is an important attitudinal shift, even if you have somebody who is suboptimal at what they do. If you realize that you work with somebody who's like, a little bit meh, they still can teach you something. Even if you pick somebody thoroughly incompetent or borderline unethical for a specific service, they still have something to teach you. For sure, they know a thing or two about their supposed area of expertise than you, right? So even if you chose wrongly, extract as much as you can from them and move on. Then point 8, always assume that it's you and not them or the method. This means that if you choose to work with somebody and use their method and it's not working, the default thought for you must be, I'm probably doing something wrong here, rather than this method doesn't work for me. The method itself clearly works. There are other people who run, for example, cold email or who run ads to live webinars or who do content at scale. It works for them. So the method cannot be at fault. It has to be you. Now, there are some situations and some rare scenarios where, for example, cold email does not work. I've actually covered this in a recent video where I talk about pain peaks versus pain plateaus. You should check that out as well. It's here. You can click on this tile. But those situations where a method does not work for a specific offer are quite rare. Most client acquisition methods work on most B2B scenarios. You can sell AI automation using cold email. You can sell it using content. You can sell it using communities. You can sell it using ads. So chances are that if a method is not working for you right now, it doesn't mean that the method will never work for you. You just have to try more often. You have to try different things. And especially back to the earlier point, if you've committed to actually learning one specific client acquisition system in-house, you yourself, the founder, making it work in-house, you own it, then you will also have appreciated that it's actually quite hard to making it work. Each method works, but it can take quite a bit of time and effort to make it work. Having done it yourself, you will have found appreciation for the fact that it takes time and effort. The biggest rookies often expect results to arrive instantly. Okay, point 9, and that one goes slightly counter to everything else. It's actually okay to ask for some level of guarantee, for example, a money-back guarantee. We, for example, offer one. Especially in the advisory and coaching space, it's starting to be pretty common, and I actually encourage it. I think it's good practice. Less so in the agency space because there's a lot of cost that agencies incur to do stuff for you. But as far as coaching and advisory is concerned, I'm all in favor of asking for money-back guarantee. Right, so get a good deal. If you can get a money-back guarantee, take it, but that should be a minor point for you. Primarily, you should work with the person because you believe that their expertise will get you to the next level. Point 10, and this is a really hard one, and I've kept it to the end because you'll probably stop watching this video when I say this, but let's face the facts, you're probably not as attractive as you think you are. In fact, there is room for creating commission-based deals with external service providers. However, in this case, the service provider has to have the ability to make a lot of money, at least 5, if not 10 times more than what they usually could for their usual services. So for example, our service costs between 12 and 15K USD. I probably would take a commission-based deal where we get paid very little or nothing upfront if there is realistic potential for making at least 60,000 to, let's say, 150,000, 5 to 10 times of what we charge. In that case, I actually might be convinced to do a commission-based deal. However, the likelihood of that happening must be real. If we run the math here, for me to make 100,000 on one single deal, we have to assume that the commission would be a maximum 20%, probably more like 10%. So my work would need to add 1 million in revenue so that I can get 10% of that, which would mean 100,000. Now, I will not believe for a second that a business that is making currently less than 100,000 a month is even capable of absorbing another 100,000 a month from my work. And yet, the people who most vocally ask for commission-based deals are people who make less than 20K a month. I literally had one guy on a sales call once who was making 0 and was telling me 20K a month. I recently spoke to somebody who had 0 revenue, who had big plans, who had a big roster of people who said that they would work with them as partners, quote unquote, right? Meaning unpaid people. But in reality, the guy had nothing going on. He actually still had a job. So even he didn't believe in his business enough. And this guy asked me to work for free for a commission-based deal. And he promised me that they would get to 20 million in revenue soon, offering me 15% of that. Like totally delusional. 0 proof that he's even remotely capable of getting to any kind of revenue. He still had a job, but he was so delusional that he seriously thought, oh, come on board with a rev-share deal and we're going to pay you 15%. We're going to pay you 3 million. Just totally ridiculous. So unless you are at well above 100K a month, and unless you already have some system where you systematically take strangers and turn them into your clients at a fairly predictable rate, you're not as attractive as you think you are as a target for a service provider to invest time and effort into you. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, but you have to also see it from the end of a competent service provider. They have many other options, and you maybe have a total of 12 clients via referrals in your network. That's your track record so far. You've never closed a cold stranger. And you're now suggesting that they should work for free for you for a very uncertain outcome. They should trust that you will show up to sales calls that they book for you, that you'll quickly learn how to close a stranger. Another person I spoke to told me that they have been lazy in the past and haven't put a lot of effort into building their business. And now they were ready, but a little bit reluctantly so, just business was drying up a bit. So they're okay, well, I have to do it. And someone like that who has a declared history of laziness now is asking me to work for them for free for a chance at getting some revenue share at some point later. If you think that this is an attractive offer, right? If you are in this position of this one guy who's like, oh, I've been lazy, but now, okay, fine, I'm going to do some client acquisition. Michael, work with me for a revenue share. If you think that's an attractive offer, then you're a little bit like this, I want to say, like, let's say, acquaintance of mine from student days who was a socially very awkward chap who I knew, who really exacerbated his distinctively bad looks by wearing very cheap and washed out clothes, and who, despite all of these very distinctive misgivings, refused to approach any girl who wasn't a straight 10. And not only that, she had to be a blonde straight 10. I kid you not. If he saw a straight 10 who was a brunette, she actually wasn't good enough for him. And it's not like he was some unhappy, miserable brooder. He was actually quite funny and cheerful, but he was so fascinating in his delusion of his own worth on the dating market that I spent far more time with him than I should have. I just couldn't help myself. He was like this rare scientific phenomenon for me to study. And I thought, like, dude, you look like one of those orcs from Lord of the Rings with your dad bod drooping out of your $6.99 H&M shirt. And here is a Gal Gadot lookalike throwing her hair back. And you think you are in a position to choose? You're in a position to reject her? Anyway, thankfully, my study days are over now, so I'm not going to be spending any more time convincing anyone one-on-one to stop wanting a commission-based deal. So if that is you and you've landed on this video and I've now squarely attacked your ego, so you probably don't like me anymore, but maybe this will be useful because I've left a seed of doubt that will grow into something useful that you can take action on. And if you like this video, you will definitely like this other video of mine where I talk about how working with done-for-you lead gen agencies is probably going to fail in 90% of cases. So if that's interesting, click over there.